relationship, I experienced physical abuse. So I've kind of had it all. At that point, I really went into kind of this period of what I call getting even, where I was really trying to regain my control and my own power because I felt it had been, my childhood was robbed from me in a number of ways. So it was kind of a rebellious period. You guys may have experienced that already or seen people who do, but so I kind of went through my 20s in that. And then I met the man that I was going to marry at the age of 30, and you'd think at 30 you'd be smart, right? In relationships, and now you got it all figured out, you know who you're gonna marry and got it all done, right? Well, he was an alcoholic. He started drinking when he was 14, so that whole addictive nature for him was very much a part of his makeup. And our kind of MO was partying back then. We were talking just a minute ago, I lived in PB, so party haven back in my 20s. Went to Michigan State University, kind of backing up, lived in Vail, Colorado. I was a chef in a German restaurant. I've traveled around the world. I've done a bike tour for 2.5 months in Australia and New Zealand, so I've done some cool stuff. But as I got married at 30 and had children, I have a 22-year-old who's in Afghanistan right now in the Army, and I have a 19-year-old who travels the world as a musician. She's in Scotland, I think, right now. I don't keep track anymore. Really awesome kids. But kind of backing up to me, as I was getting into this whole parenting thing and realizing, oh my gosh, I'm raising children up. What am I doing? So my son was 15 years old, and he was taking driver's ed at the time, and we were filling out the logbook. You have to drive like in a blizzard. This is in Michigan, and do all this driving. And what happened was we were filling the logbook out, and he looks over my shoulder and he's like, Mom, I can't wait till I can get my driver's license and I can date. Excuse me? So he's like, Mom, everybody knows when you're 16 you get your driver's license and you can date. Well, I missed that memo. So it kind of started me on this thing, and we went through the driver's ed manual and changed the word driver to the word dater, and all these crazy analogies came out, which is, 59,000 words later I wrote a book. So I do a lot of guest speaking because it's a unique analogy, but I've also independently done a lot of research for my own healing and my own purposes and my own parenting skills on brain development. So I kind of want to touch on that. I don't know if you guys have gotten into that. You have some amazing questions up there. And what I love about your brains right now, you guys, is they're not yet petrified like the adult brain. Like our brains are like really tough to get new information in and get it to stick. Where you guys are in this really crazy cool place where there's this gap still between the amygdala. Have you guys read about the amygdala at all? Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And I want to leave lots of time and really get into these questions with you, but let me give you a little bit about the brain. When you're born, the first part of your brain to develop is the amygdala. It's the back of your brain. It's with it's part of the limbic system, and basically the amygdala is what I call the feeling center. So it's attached to all the sensory things, the sights, the sounds, the smells. So all of those things really play into the amygdala. So when a baby cries because it's wet, it's not knowing, oh, I think I have a dirty diaper. It's saying, I feel uncomfortable, so it cries. So all the responses are based on that. So as you grow, your brain develops, and it connects a synapses between the amygdala and what we as adults hopefully use more of the time, which is the prefrontal cortex. Now the prefrontal cortex is where it's decision making, risk management, impulse control. So all of those things are located in the prefrontal cortex. So our job as parents, in relation to you and relating to dating, is to help you understand what a healthy relationship looks like, knowing that we are thinking from the prefrontal cortex, you're feeling from the amygdala, and how to bridge that gap. So that when you are healthy adults, you can choose wisely in love and in your relationships, whether it be friendships, whether you can recognize an unhealthy boss or employee situation. So all relationships are tied into that modeling that starts from a very, very young age. Am I going too fast? I'm Italian and I've had 2 cups of coffee. Am I good? Okay. So that's really something that I want to really kind of tap into with you guys because you're at a stage, you read these questions up here, and adults would read a lot of this and go, well, that's ridiculous. Why would they ask that question? Because they're thinking from a very different part of their brain. You guys still are in a very curious mode, but you have the ability to amygdala or prefrontal cortex and bounce back and forth. we don't always have the ability to do that. We kind of lose that over time. The amygdala kind of gets locked down, your memories get trapped in there. That's why a lot of people have these reoccurring issues with depression and anxiety and things because of memories that happened a long, long time ago. So it's really healthy to heal those, okay? So do you guys want to get right into these questions? Do you have any questions about the amygdala or prefrontal? Yeah. Yes? Do you have a question? Oh, you just have your finger in there because it feels good? There you go. I'm sorry. Okay, so, do you want me to just run through the questions? Would that be best? Is that good for you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this heading in the direction you want, or do you want, yeah? You like this? Okay. Because I thought, you've probably done a lot of the other kind of research, and this is kind of cool to take it from this perspective and understand what's going on up there. Okay, how do you know when you're in and out of love? Well, I do a lot of speaking on, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I was a professional matchmaker. Oh, minor detail. Yeah, for 4.5 years. In my 20s, which was odd, because I really didn't know what I was doing. And just so you know, your brain is not fully developed till the age of 25. So, if you imagine, here's an analogy, if you imagine from a car perspective, when a car is built on the assembly line in Detroit, which is where I'm from, the first part of the car to be built is the body. So they piece it all together, they weld it, they prime it, they buff it out, they paint it, they shine it, and it's all nice. But they haven't installed all the parts yet. That's kind of where you guys are. You look all put together, but you're not quite done yet. You still have some developmental, learning, educational things, which is why you're in school. But what's cool about that is if you think about that from a dating perspective, how do you know if you're in love? Well, if you pull that car down off the assembly line and want to drive it, it's not going to go very far. It's missing an engine, it's missing brakes, it's missing a steering column. So it's the same thing with you guys. To get involved in a relationship right now with somebody, you're going to get involved with somebody your own age, that's also not done yet. So you have two people that are still missing parts. You're not defective, but you're missing parts. So the idea is to develop all that in a healthy way till right around your mid-20s, which is really kind of the prime time in which you're really ready to receive healthy love. What does healthy love look like? Have you guys studied like oxytocin, pheromones, serotonin, some of the chemicals? Okay. My two favorites and where I like to focus is oxytocin and vasopressin. And the reason for that is the oxytocin is considered the cuddle drug. So that's like the cuddle chemical in your mind. Serotonin, on the other hand, is more geared towards, it has a lot of the chemical release and makeup of OCD. So when serotonin is released, when there's lust or an attraction, that's kind of, have you ever heard somebody say, oh my gosh, I can't stop thinking about him? Okay, that's OCD. That's the serotonin, okay? Same kind of idea. So all of this, literally, you guys, love is an addictive kind of a drug. So you can imagine what it's like to date under the influence of alcohol or cocaine or heroin or something like that. I mean, it's mind altering. You're not making good decisions. It's the same thing. If you mix thought process with amygdala and you add the release of pheromones and testosterone and estrogen and serotonin and all of these different hormones and chemicals, you're literally mind altered. And that's why it's really, really difficult to make a good decision. You asked me the question earlier, how do you know? How do you pick? Do you know if this is the right one or the wrong one? How do you know? And it's important to learn to develop this sense about yourself, to know when you're under the influence of those chemicals. Sounds kind of weird, but I'll give you an example. Have you guys ever gone, girls will relate to this, I'm trying to think of guys in terms of an analogy, like you're on Xbox or something. Xbox, it's a very visual thing, and there's sound, there's, you can almost like smell the anger, it's just intense, right? So you're more apt, if you go into a game store and somebody puts that game on, you're much more apt to buy it because they're introducing all your senses. They're helping you release that oxytocin and that vasopressin in your mind, which is creating a long-term attachment, i.e. addiction. Okay? Does that make sense? So you'll be able to start recognizing when you're easily influenced is a great way to think about that. You'll go like, I can't believe she got me to do that. Or I can't believe, I signed up for that. That's typically when you're emotionally involved, you have a high level of amygdala, high level of chemical stuff going on in your mind that's really influencing the addictive nature and the release of those chemicals. Does that make sense? Everybody kind of with me?
Yeah.
It's intense stuff, huh? Yeah, okay. So how do you know when you're in and out of love? Again, now, I was married for 22 years. My ex-husband, which I call my husband, he left for his high school sweetheart. Found her on Facebook. What's interesting about that is the second he saw her face, there was a pathway, a groove, like a groove in a record, that was so deeply embedded and evoked such a good feeling. I mean, you're paying your mortgage payments, you're taking out the trash, you're raising kids, you're dealing with school conferences. That's not necessarily the yummy part of life, right? So all of a sudden he sees her and goes, ooh, I remember the yummy part of life, and it was way back when I didn't have responsibilities. So he left for her because that pathway was so strong, and he never dealt with that it was very easy to just go right back to that and get that good feeling that he'd had so many years ago, okay? So was I in love when I married him? Well, I was under the influence of alcohol. I was drinking at the time. You know, I was in my 20s and it was party city. He was drinking. So we really weren't, we thought we were in love. And it can really, a lot of the chemical releases, if you read on them, it's not a feeling of love as much as it's the same. They actually liken it to what it would be like to snort coke. Okay, it's that intense. So feeling love, we all want to feel good. We want to have that release. We want to feel relaxed and have that oxytocin and that vasopressin and all those great relaxed attachment feelings. But there's a healthy side of that, and then it just flips pretty quickly into an unhealthy side. So kind of that OCD thing. So you have to be really careful. Why is it hard for people to stay committed to one another? Okay, that's a great question, and here's what's interesting about that. Staying committed to one another takes work. Now I call it the we factor, and you guys will recognize this. Typically at your age, you're more self-absorbed, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's kind of a good thing. You're protecting yourself and learning about yourself. And even though you can have social relations, you're really kind of in it for the me factor, okay? The we factor transitions, again, right around the prefrontal cortex time, where that's where you're really able to compromise and be compassionate and be empathetic, and all of those feelings start coming to play when you say, you know, honey, please don't put the wooden spoon in the dishwasher. That's really annoying to me. The me factor is, too bad. I've been doing it my whole life. I'm doing it that way. I don't care what you think. The we factor goes, wow, this is important to her. I'm going to make a conscious effort not to do that anymore. That's what the commitment is for life. So you're going to come against things, not a wooden spoon, but really big, serious things, and child rearing and all of that. And I meet with parents, I coach parents all the time, I coach couples, and I can almost, within 30 seconds, watch the dynamic between them and see what are the facial expressions, what are the huffing and puffing, the rolling of the eyes, the body language. All of that creates pathways through the sensory outputs that release or don't release the chemicals necessary to have that long-term attachment. Does that make sense? Okay. Did I answer that question? Staying committed? Okay. Parents, how much do our parents or parents' relationships influence our own? Absolutely everything. But if you're like me and you don't have that option, like my dad wasn't even around. I mean, he died when I was 3 months old, then I had a stepdad who was there, but he never protected me in the protective sense. The thing that creates a healthy release of oxytocin, which is that calming, reducing stress, making you feel good, it kind of, the amygdala is like the fear thing, and it's really engaged in recognizing a face that's angry. So what's important as a parent is the touching, the holding, the affection, smiling. Smiling is really big. I mean, if you guys want to give somebody an oxytocin release, just smile at them. It's amazing. It's something that just really, we don't even know, but they do brain scans and they say smiling is one of the things that really does that. Music is a great thing, as long as it's the kind of music that you relate to. If it's annoying, then No, but, so all of the sensory outputs. But your parents, one of the things I teach on is a cortisol release. And the amygdala, again, where you guys are at, not quite fully developed with the prefrontal cortex, but the amygdala is your primary brain default. So if you read all the questions that you write up here, a lot of those are having to do with the amygdala, questions that are curiosity questions. And not really sure, why can't I focus on this? Why can't I do that? Those are all because you're just not fully developed. That's the simple reason. So here's the thing about stress in a relationship. I talk a lot about dating violence. It's a huge issue. We have a whole month of February dedicated to that in our nation. So violence starts with bullying early on. So there's this customary thing that happens that triggers into teen dating violence. But here's what's interesting about it in the brain. So the amygdala, you're going along, right? And let's say you get yelled at for something. You didn't do your homework, you didn't clean your room, it happens at home, okay? You have an adrenaline rush, and you guys know what that feels like. It could be in your gut, you get a sick feeling in your stomach, your neck might get stiff, you might get, cold and sweaty. There's an adrenaline response. When that adrenaline is released, you have approximately 60 seconds before cortisol is released, okay? So what happens is the oxytocin needs to be released to come and gather all the cortisol and dump it back into the liver and everything and get rid of it. If you don't do something about that and cortisol is released, it's released and lasts in your brain for about 2.5 hours, and you're in chronic stress. So if you've ever experienced, and one time I remember, I got yelled at for not cleaning my room. I was sent to my room, go up right now and clean your room. I went up there, knew that's what I needed to do, but I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. I couldn't function. I was like in freeze mode because I was yelled at so badly. So I'm sitting there, and this is again a relational thing that you have to recognize in yourself if you're accustomed to this. So I sat on the bed, my dad came up an hour later, yelled at me again. Another release of cortisol. Now I had another 2.5 hours onto that. That puts you in chronic stress. So you come to school and you're in chronic stress, you have 3 modes: fight, flight, or freeze. So if you're finding you can't focus on your homework, you're in freeze mode. If you're finding rebellion, you're in fight mode. Okay, so these things are really, really important to recognize in yourself, because if you don't understand it now, then you're going to carry that because it's familiar, it's created a pathway, you're going to carry that into a future dating relationship because it's familiar. It's not healthy, but it's familiar. Make sense? Okay. Yes?
How do you stop that from happening? How do you train your brain to do these things?
Excellent question. Excellent question. I went and saw a dentist in Michigan speak, and I was like, okay, what does he know about the brain? Well, he went in one day, and his nurse said, or his dental hygienist said, you have a new patient, and she's in room 2. He goes in, he's never met this woman in his life. She's 43. She's in the fetal position in the corner, bawling her eyes out. Turns out she'd had a bad experience when she was 5 years old. That pathway was so strong, she couldn't get that memory, and she was terrified of dentists. And you hear that a lot. People are terrified of dentists. So he started doing research and found from all this research that he did that there's only one way to stop the release of cortisol. So your adrenaline, you got 60 seconds, you're in shock. Like if a fire alarm went off right now, every one of us would have an adrenaline release. And then your brain kind of goes, okay, warning, 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 is this something I need to shut my brain down? If you go, oh, that was somebody that popped a balloon, your brain's gonna go, oh, okay, we're fine, and you're good, and you move on. But if it's something like, oh no, a bomb went off somewhere, then in 60 seconds, cortisol will be released. The only thing proven so far to date to re-engage the prefrontal cortex, which is all logic, risk management, decision making, and not have the amygdala and the cortisol release go into full fear mode is the craziest thing. You ready? You guys will never guess. Math. Yep, it's math. True story. Oh, have you ever heard the expression for parents, if you get mad, count to 10? Yeah. Okay. It's calming you down. Math. It's the only I know, like a lot of people say, well, math stresses me out. I'm like, yeah, I get it. But it's not complicated math, you guys. It's easy, you know, under digit 10, subtraction, addition, multiplication, and division, okay? So if you get yelled at, or if something happens, or you see a car accident or something, and you're driving, right? If you don't do something to lower your adrenaline and not release the cortisol, you're gonna absolutely go into stress mode, okay? And you're not gonna be a good driver, you're not gonna be in a healthy relationship, it'll impact all kinds of things in your life. So what you do is, it's just such a simple exercise. So let's say you're just yelling at me about something, and I'm getting all stressed out. I don't have to say it out loud, I can just focus on our forehead or anything else and just think of the things in the room. There's how many chairs in the room? Okay, I saw 4 chairs and there are 3 on the other side, so 4 plus 3 equals. And then you do this math, right? You keep doing it and you will literally feel yourself calm down. Try it. Really, it's an amazing tool, yes.
So I read that cortisol, if it's released too much, it can like damage your brain cells,
Yes.
like the neurons, and it can kill connections. If it's so damaging, is there any like actual use for it?
Healthy levels of cortisol are good. They kind of amp up the amygdala. They are really, it's kind of a gray area still in research, but what the amygdala kind of requires cortisol, it's kind of like the spark that gets the amygdala in healthy ways to make you be fearful and respond well to fear. I mean, fear is a healthy thing in a lot of ways, you know. The bomb goes off, you want to not freeze and you want to run. So a healthy amount of cortisol can motivate. So there is a good amount of that, but if there's too much of it, it's chronic stress. So you just have to be careful, and you'll start recognizing if I find somebody in stress, like if I have a teen that calls me, I get texting from teens all the time, and I'll call them up and we'll chat and be like, oh, you know, this happened, and they're like crazy. I'll say, okay, let's do math, and I'll say, you know, 3 plus 4, and they'll be like 10. I'm like, oh, they're in real chronic stress. This is like a high school graduate that can't do the math, and you'll find it's true. It's crazy. So really, kind of just watch that, and again, going back to dating, because we're talking about love. This is something that you guys have to recognize when you're in a healthy relationship. The other person should be a really truly healthy relationship. Number one, isn't going to intentionally stress you out like that. They should not be the source of your cortisol release, period. If they are, walk away. It's hard to do, but it's absolutely the healthiest thing to do. Now, there's going to be other stress factors that come into play. I have a whole chapter on curves, like, you know something's coming up, whether it's a job offer, you're dating somebody who just gets a job offer in Dowagiac, Michigan, and they're moving. You know, there's a stress factor, but it's external. So then together, a perfect partner will recognize your stress and help you lower that cortisol and keep you calm and smile and rub your back or whatever it takes to lower that cortisol and make you think clearly. So that's one of the ways you can really recognize a healthy relationship. So one of the things I talk about, it's really important for you guys to recognize in healthy relationships, and what we don't have that I think needs to be put in place. Think about Indy 500, okay? You guys all watch that. I mean, would it not be cool to drive an Indy car? Like, super cool, right? So, do you have your driver's license?
No, I don't.
Okay, so you're a perfect example. What if I said today you're driving in the Indy? Would that freak you out?
Yeah.
Okay, but you'd still love it, right? You'd be
Yeah.
like, yeah, cool, okay? Healthy adults go, no, that's a bad idea because we don't have the experience. We know we've had lots. No, but I'm saying, because you've never had experience, it's not, you're thinking from a completely different part of your brain, which is awesome, because you do take risks that we don't take, which is cool. But you can't manage those risks because you don't have the experience to draw on, okay? So, an Indy 500 car driver has a pit crew, hand-selected people that are watching to do one thing, keep their driver safe, right, and get them to the finish line. So that when driver's on turn 2, pit crew's watching turn 3. If there's a fire or an accident or, you know, hay bale in the way or whatever, they're going to warn them. So a pit crew, gather 5 or 6 or 10 of your friends that are trusted friends, give them permission to take you out when you're dating the wrong person. because you're not thinking clearly. You're seeing it from a completely different perspective. My daughter's 19, she has a pit crew, and they call me and say, oh, guy she's dating is bad news, here's why. But she gave them permission to do that. They're not tattling or ratting her out or whatever. But that's what I'm saying is in love relationships, we don't typically, our culture doesn't embrace that concept. If I wanna be in love with somebody, I get to be in love with whoever I want, date whoever I want, and you can't say anything about it, right? Well, the state mandates laws and rules around driving in an unhealthy way. You can't drive 95 through a school zone. It's a bad idea. So why don't we apply some of those things to love and have healthier relationships? Make sense? Okay, any questions right now? Yes?
For the example, when you said like, Sylvia, if she was yelling at you, would you be counting like while she's yelling at you?
Yes.
So are you like ignoring what she's saying?
Yeah, I mean, I understand it could be your parent, you should be better pay attention to what they're saying, but understand too, they're coming at it from an aggressive cortisol release place as well. So you'll be able, surprisingly, to hear both, but yeah, I would say you'll hear what they're saying, but at the same time, really try to do the math in your head and keep that cortisol from being released.
Okay. And if you don't mind, what's your opinion on like the age difference?
The age dating somebody with a different age? Well, again, so it would be like somebody 16 dating somebody 21. There's a completely different level of experiences, brain development. You're coming at it from a very different place. Typically, again, maturity plays a big part of that. But a 21-year-old can be very much more manipulative in the relationship, and I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way, but is really going to kind of run the relationship because they have more brain capacity to do that. I mean, think of it this way. Think of a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. Who's in charge?
7-year-old.
Yeah, and it's simply because their brain is more fully developed. You know, you don't have 3-year-olds running algebra class for a reason. You know, so can it be done? Yes, the age difference closes dramatically after about the age of 30, 32. So if a 30-year-old dates a 40-year-old, experientially they're very different from a brain development. They're there. So it's much more critical at this age. So, anybody else before I move on? Okay, how are we doing? Are we okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything? Are we going in the direction you want to go? Are we getting this?
We're hitting all your questions, I think. If you
This is
guys
good?
have a question along the way, though, feel free to
Okay.
ask us.
So what makes for a good match? I kind of touched on that. A good match should be if all of your peers, 10 of them, I get to pick them out and I say, what do you think? Does this bring out the best in her? Does this bring out the best in him? Is he changed? Has she changed? You know, what is the good and the bad? It should be, and I'll give you a funny example. My daughter was like brilliant at puzzles, and at age 6 she was doing like the 300-piece puzzles like super fast, and she was doing a Pocahontas puzzle once, and she goes, Mom, boys and girls are just like puzzle pieces. Okay? I said, why is that? And she says, you know, sometimes it looks like the right one, and you want to be friends with that one, and you want that boy to be your boyfriend. This is at 6 now. And you try, and you push, and it looks like the right one, but no matter what you do, it will not fit. She goes, you have to wait for the right one. Wow. Oh, wow. That's why she graduated high school a year early, I guess, because you were way ahead of me. So my point of that is, and what I took away from that is, it's absolutely true. Is there a soulmate? Is there one person? I don't necessarily believe there's just one person that you can love, but I think good is the enemy of great. I think that we want so desperately to be in a love relationship by nature that when a good one comes along, we will literally take ourselves off the showroom floor, as a car example, and we will no longer be on the market for the great one that comes along. So you have to be super patient, and again, that takes logic, and it's difficult at your age to go, you know, meet somebody and say, oh my gosh, they're perfect. Well, okay, from the outsider's perception, they might not be perfect, and you might not recognize the reasons why, but you are already, the oxytocin's already gone, okay? Why do we need love? I think that's why we're here. I mean, we're here on this planet to be, whether you have a faith in God or not, the reality is we're all here on this earth together, and if we weren't meant to be in relationships, we'd all be seeking to find our little treehouse somewhere, you know, in the forest that, leave me alone, I don't wanna be with anybody. So we have a natural desire to be in love. Is love an instinct? I think sex is an instinct. I think love is a need. Animals have, you know, they have sex all the time, obviously procreate. There was a really interesting study done on prairie voles, and it's a little teeny rodent, and only 3% of mammals have the ability that are monogamous, okay? And they did this study with, did you read it in this article? Yeah, it was really fascinating. I love that. And the prairie vole is, the way it works is they have actually sex for 24 hours, which is crazy. And then they have such an intense release of oxytocin, they have, the neuroreceptors will have the vasopressin release. They have a really high level of vasopressin. And so what that does is creates a long-term attachment. And so they are bonded to that other prairie vole for life. They are completely monogamous. There's other voles that have a little bit different DNA makeup, just enough that they don't have those vasopressin receptors. So even though they release oxytocin during sex, they can go on to the next girl, you know, 2 minutes later and do the same thing and get the same experience out of it. And they have no ability to be monogamous whatsoever. So again, that vasopressin is really critical, and recognizing if you're depressed or anxious, vasopressin and oxytocin go way down. So what gets that back up again? A healthy relationship would be somebody who recognizes that in you and knows what it takes. You know, with my son, when he's stressed, if I just rub, it's the weirdest thing, the back of his arm right here, just the back of his arm calms him right down. If I say, he's 22, honey, will you take out the trash for me? He's like, whatever, okay? But if I say it the exact same way and rub the back of his arm, he'll like, can I do anything else for you, Mom? I mean, it's just, it's crazy. And you guys know this. I mean, you start paying attention to it, it's the craziest thing. Okay, what contributes to an unhealthy relationship? I think we kind of touched on that. But essentially, again, unhealthy being, if somebody is not bringing out the best in you and encouraging you and really exhibiting the we factor, and again, other people are much more apt to be able to see it than you are. So be brave, ask the questions to your friends and to your family, and listen. The difference between loving someone and being in love. Real love is an interesting question because there's actually four Greek words for love. We love our chair, we love our dog, we love cottage cheese, we love our spouse. It's kind of like, okay, what is love? Well, there's really 3 or 4 main categories. One is kind of a category, it's affection. But there's friendship love, there's love the way you love your spouse, and then there's agapeo, which is agape love, which is God's love, which is completely isolated to and comes from God in the Greek. So friendship love can transition into loving a person. You even to the point of you love your sibling, you love your parents, you love them not in a way that encourages you to have intimacy with them, okay? So being in love and loving a person can get kind of confusing sometimes, but the distinction really is, again, the way that you, in a healthy way, see that person in a monogamous, committed relationship. Okay, antidepressants and other medications affect our ability to love. What's your answer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now that I've said what I've said. Yeah, absolutely. I think it was, I read an article about that, I'm trying to remember who it was by, about treating people with antidepressants, taking antidepressants because their marriage was going bad, taking them off the antidepressants and encouraging them to engage in physical intimacy and, just even affection, and how their marriages are restored. not that simple, but the gist of it is the antidepressant, it's kind of a vicious cycle. The antidepressant lowers the release, which makes you feel more alone and more rejected, and then you're not releasing again, and it's just kind of a vicious cycle. Why are we attracted to certain people? And again, those are the pathways. That's the amygdala at a very small child. If you see a face and that face triggers something for you, if somebody, okay, here's a great example. If I say the name Ryan, you all immediately think of somebody you know, Ryan, and you know I like him or I don't like him, right? Don't point him out if he's in the room, okay? Why is that? Because you had an experience with that person which created a memory which is stored in your amygdala, and now that's a pathway. So it's going to trigger every time. So the likelihood of you dating somebody named Ryan if you don't like him is probably not very good. Whatever, yes?
You said to heal that pathway. How would you go about healing that thought?
Yeah, and that's a great question. There's a lot of different ways to do that. Mine was more self. I did a lot of research, a lot of studying, a lot of understanding. My husband now, I'm married. I just got married 2 months ago, by the way. Yep, a wonderful man. He's not an alcoholic, by the way. One of the things he talks about is thought wars, and thought wars are affirmations and what we do and what we experience. And you can go to a psychologist, you can take medication, you can do self-help books. The key for you guys right now is recognizing it. If you recognize it and eliminate it right off the bat, it takes 7 positive thoughts to undo a negative thought. So if you look at somebody and go, I can't stand them, they're so annoying. Okay, you've now just convinced your brain that that person's annoying, and it's going to take a lot of work to make sure you find out they're not. Okay, so the idea is it's the recognizing of it, recognizing your patterns, and again, being brave enough to ask the people that do love you, that you're in a healthy relationship with, what do you see about me? Am I compassionate? Am I understanding of people? Am I patient? And work on those things and use positive affirmations over and over again to really create the person that you know you can be and get out of those dysfunctional patterns that may not be your fault. You may have been raised in that environment or had an experience that created that. But it's been fun for me because watching all that I'm 53 years old. So, I've been doing this for a lot of years, and it's taken a lot of work, but I'm really happy with where I am now, and I recommend it for anybody to commit to that work. Okay, why do people cheat? Well, I think I covered that one, didn't I? Do you want any other questions about that?
I have a question.
Yes.
Like how you said about your ex who went back to his high school sweetheart or whatever, and then you just told him you need positive affirmations to get rid of the cycle, but for him, how would you get rid of something that wasn't necessarily negative, but you're still attached to it?
Like my attachment to him or
Like
his
his
attachment to her?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that's a good question. He didn't want to. He kept that.
It was the patterns of it.
Yeah, and he kept that around. And all it took was she sent one email or one Facebook message to him that said, I think about you all the time. I still have the sweatshirt you gave me in high school, and I still carry your high school picture in my wallet. Okay, this is a 53-year-old, by the way. So, but what it did for him was go, yes, that's where I want to be. I want to go back to high school where I was perfect and I wasn't a full-blown alcoholic yet, and I didn't have any failures, and I wasn't feeling like a bad father, and I wasn't feeling like a bad husband. So it put him right back there. So I think people hold on to those things. It's like my daughter has what she calls the Xbox. It's not what you guys think. It's a silver briefcase, and she puts all the guys that she's dated, every time they break up with her, she breaks up with them with a letter or a card, and it all goes in there.
Dang.
And she uses that as a reminder of why. So when they come back, when Kyle calls her and says, oh, I can't stop thinking about you, I know it's been a year, can we get back together? She goes in the Xbox and goes, oh yeah, no. Okay, so you have to create an environment and make a decision. But some people decide they want to kind of hold it out for plan B, just in case. And that's not a healthy, we factor monogamous relationship, okay? Yes.
What if you want to break off the attachment, but you still have feelings for that person?
Well, and you will have feelings, and it really takes a lot of practice. And that's one of the reasons, you guys, why we say don't get in a relationship till you're 25, because you're gonna have to fight feelings. And every time you hear "Stairway to Heaven," every time you hear, see a yellow dress, every time you smell Axe cologne, those, okay, got it? Trigger, and it's all coming from the amygdala. It's much easier for me when I was dating, after my husband left and I was dating, I went on 37 dates in 1 month. I'm a serial dater. I was doing what I call research and development. When you shop for a car, you don't just get all dressed up and go test drive one car and go, oh my gosh, I love it so much, I gotta have it, and go home and wait to test drive it next Saturday night. You drive 5 like in a day, right? And you come. Yeah. Okay, let's not go there. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, coffee in between breakfast and lunch, frozen yogurt, so I had 2 in the hopper. And then I had other guys, right, so I could go home at the end of the day and go, well, he was really boring, he was a little into himself, and I could compare from a position of logic. You guys have a really hard time doing that. You'd get to the first one and go, oh my gosh, he's perfect, or whatever, right? So that's why we caution you and say, until you have the ability to make those decisions and really be able to dive into the logic of why they're not the best choice for you. It's like my son. He's getting shipped off to Afghanistan. His girlfriend's like, oh, I wish I'd known that when I met him. I go, he was in the Army. You knew he was getting deployed, but she couldn't think that through. So now she's freaking out and she has these feelings because that she logically didn't think through. Does that make sense? Any questions? How are we doing? Are we almost done?
Actually, yeah, we're right at lunchtime. Do
Sorry.
you guys want to are there any last questions for her, or maybe?
Yes.
Is there some way that we can contact you through email?
Absolutely, yes. I'll give you my email address and my phone number. So my email is just my name, Lisa Jander, Jan as in Nancy, DER, @gmail.com. And my phone number is 951-285-5566. And I know I didn't get to some of these, I'm sorry, I tried, but there's a whole deep, there's so much stuff. So please feel free to contact me, I'd love to hear your questions. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Is it?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And would you mind if there are last or lingering questions, maybe?
Sure, not a problem. I don't have anywhere to go right away, so if you guys want to stay and ask a question. Personal in nature, I'll take those too.
Like, honestly, he's like probably had to do
Yeah, if you're not,
I want to ask you more about the parents. Keep it with good at all times.
Remember when I talked about like internal tension versus external? So if you have internal tension, that
You know
stems
what?
from typically
Sometimes
one
when I'm
person.
stressed out, I
know.
License plates and I add up
Pretty
all the
much
numbers
everything
and try
that you
to
experience, like
patterns, and like I never knew why I did that.
his lifetime was diagnosed
Every
with
time-
I did that one time.
and 6 years, she's not the one that did it. He was so in love with her and into the relationship. He was able to shift into
How to take your breath.
and anybody
No, I
that's
just
in a
like
healthy
count
relationship.
and take deep breaths with your
So
counts
for
and
the
it'll like calm me down in any
exercise,
state.
particularly,
Yeah, it's like pretty much meditation. Right? Like,
so for them
Yeah.
to be able to
Okay,
it's tough.
Do you want to go ask Melissa?
Your question.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Do you wanna, did you wanna?
I feel like we should talk about
I think
more
it's-
or more, cause I feel like.
I think she got it really good though. Like there's a lot of things. Like everything that she yeah. But it was like everything that she talked about unhealthy relationships. That was like I wrote all that down. That was like directly related to me, like little things that contribute to unhealthy relationships. She was talking about how they had like the plan B sort of thing, and that's like not good to contribute to
But
the
for like
relationship
a
between you and that
35-year-old
person.
married with a
That's
2-year-old.
the exact same thing as like I'm available about it. So with somebody who has like
different animal because he's got
they're
a
like
full
there
functioning
and happy,
brain.
but they also have like
It
other, I
doesn't
don't know,
just happen like they say.
ideas and preconceived things that they've already brought into the relationship.
So
I don't know, I got some
it
really good stuff
really
out of
is a
it.
matter of staying connected. So almost daily, it's hard work, you know, you really have to be aware of where that partner is and, you know, what they're experiencing and make sure you're continuing to help with the healthy release of chemicals to stay connected, because it's a brutal world that way. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, did you have a question?
Even though my topic for this paper isn't really on love or relationships or anything, it was until my boyfriend and I found out he was sort of cheating on me. Well, more like cheating on another girl with me. He never told me about the other girl, and he's been trying to break up with her, but he never did it. Anyway, I could tell I was really, really involved in the conversation, because when I'm really, really interested in something, I start like just blindly sketching things. So I drew you first off.
Oh, I got real cute there.
Thanks. Welcome.
Wow.
So I
Wow,
just-
picture that. Wow, look at you go.
I just did figure drawing of people around the room.
Okay, so what this tells me right here is you are totally in your amygdala.
Mhm.
You're totally, I mean, you were tapping into that, and that's a very creative expression right there, visual expression, and that's what you're getting, and that's beautiful. So recognizing that you have the ability to go from amygdala to prefrontal cortex if you want. This is your default. And this is
Like drawing
soothing.
really gets me. And drawing is my math.
There you go. Good. Excellent. And
Yeah.
that- and that's what, you know, to learn about yourself like that at your age.
Don't
is
give an ego
wonderful.
boost.
Because you'll be a better
I told you guys.
mom, you'll be a better friend, you'll be a better wife, all of those things will really.
Yeah, it's like I'm doing a lot of stuff. This is really neat learning about the brain and everything, because like I'm starting all these new things. I'm learning about my own anxieties and stuff like that. So it's really, really just interesting to find out how I can do this and what steps I can take. And
Yeah. Good for you. And just keep looking into it. There's so much great
Even if
research
I
out there now.
definitely
And go, I mean, I didn't have that when I was a kid, but for you to be able to look
because
at
there's
that.
just so much like stuff going on, because mine's on like music and so because music is such a big part of my life, one of the greatest parts of my life are music and art and stuff. So I know I'm a very emotional person.
Right?
And there's
And
just
now you have a tool where you don't have to be a victim to that if you don't want to be.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the math, it's a crazy thing, but it really is a calming thing, so.
Definitely.
Yeah, very cool. You're very talented.
Thank you very much.
Very
Just thought you would enjoy that.
Yeah, I did. That's cool. I like copies.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you want to scan it.
Yeah,
and then
I'll scan one.
And
Do you have,
email
like,
it.
a picture of it, or?
I could take this picture. I suppose, yeah. I'll do that.
Would you be interested in seeing our school and all, or do you have to take off?
Well, I don't want to keep you from life. No, it's fine.
I was gonna say, maybe if you wanted to show around.
Oh, sure.
We're just
Oh,
gonna
I'll-
say-
If you have the time.
Yeah,
People
I
want to like
do.
stick whatever.
But I
and
wanted to
sit
just
around as many
quick-
times.
Was
And
that?
copy and try and step
That
on
was
it.
it?
Great,
Yeah.
that was
I did that.
fantastic.
I totally
I know a lot
I
of
was
people
like,
really
I tried to,
definitely
like,
got
step on
stuff on the
it.
questions.
Okay.
It was,
But yeah,
I was
I'll
really
try that.
amazed at how you were able to get
Yeah.
to all of them.
I feel pretty confident in saying that they all
Feels
have
really
their
good, so.
questions addressed.
Okay.
And I just appreciated the opportunity, the opportunity to ask questions. It's really
Yeah,
helpful.
good.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring in some different information, that not just duplicate everything we've already heard and known, you know.
Yeah, you were definitely bringing in new stuff, and I think they, like I was saying before, I think they really appreciate it hearing it, like this is what's going on in your brain, and yeah.
Cause that's the key, more really understand liability, that's critical, so. Yeah, that was so fun.
Oh,
I
I'm
love that.
I'm glad, yeah, I'm glad you had fun, because I know you did.
Yeah.
I know I did, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, yeah.
And who was that the math teacher?
No, it wasn't, I was
Yeah.
trying to get him to come in, but I think he was with his,
Oh,
with
that's
his
okay.
students.
That was the government teacher.
Yeah, that was.
Oh,
that was the
did he
government teacher.
go, what are we doing there? Did he get it?
Oh, no, I told him to stop it.
Mm.
He wanted to stop by for a little bit.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, if your school wants me to come in and do a,
They
I do
would.
a lot of work with teachers
Mhm.
on, you know, how to do the whole cortisol and the brain development, which
Yeah.
is a lot of fun, so if you don't know for me, just give me a holler.
I just might, because I was thinking, we have an advisory program here where we meet with a certain group of students, 4 from each grade level, so each teacher per grade level meets once a week, and it's meant to be kind of a guidance sort of class, but we don't always have the best structure for it, and this kind of, I know that within our advisory, it would be a great place to students, we've got 4 from each grade level, a small
Are you
group of 16.
doing the echo?
Well, it really, and again, you know,
Really loud right here.
having relationships which ties
I think
into,
it's only affecting you.
you know,
Yeah, he
so-
sounds
Yeah.
normal.
You-
issue,
yeah.
the compassion
Really?
issue, all of those.
So you
pieces
can't
that
think
are
it's weird
really
when you stand there.
disconnected
Yeah.
in schools right now, especially if you're doing models at home, something
It's
different.
not like that, you know, you guys probably.
It's really nice to be able to pull those pieces together and
With
say,
your group.
this is what we're experiencing, this is how to handle it, these are some helpful tools. Cause it's tough, you know, I just spoke up in, I think I told you, up in, Monterey for 600 kids. It was a scary school, I mean, this was like really high risk kids. And I mean, I don't mean scary for me, but scary that, more the things that I was hearing with the experience at home, when they have to come to school and try to function, you know, get good grades, and they can't, they freeze out, and they don't stop all the time.
Right, right.
So it's, what a great group.
Yeah, they're great.
Very cool.
I thought that was, yeah, when you brought up the cortisol release with the stress, I think that was really cool to hear too.
Yeah. Well, and again, you know, getting in a relationship with your pain is something that's, you're experiencing, and you get out. It's so easy to say.
Yeah.
It's not that easy at all, so. That's why the pit crew concept really is helpful, and support structure, you know, it's critical. So, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And,
You're very welcome.
this is for you, and then we'll be in touch too to make sure that I give you this on the letterhead, everything you're
Oh, that'd be
requesting.
great, that'd be great. And do you want me to, you wanna keep a book?
Oh, I'd love to,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll autograph it for you, how's that? Awesome. Do you want it to you or just generic?
Maybe to our class of 2012, HTHI, class of 2012.
HDHI. Class. 2012. This is the 8th?
This is the 7th, actually.
Whoops, right there. Oh, wow. Yeah, and that was nice that he asked if, how to reach me, so they'll, you know, it's such a big topic, that I get a lot of questions. Sometimes I see that question, their fears or whatever, so.
Yeah.
So, okay, is she gonna give me a tour?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Oh, never mind, Jack.
And then I'll be sure to meet up with you. It's a small school, so it'll be a quick
Small
tour.
school, be quick.
But
Okay.
yeah, and then I'll meet up with you guys on the way out.
Okay, perfect,
I'll
thanks.
just put my stuff in your bag.
And tell me your name again?
Amelia.
Amelia, great name. Love that name. All right, I'm gonna set this stuff down over here.